Hello, welcome to the Diablo 3 podcast. I'm your host, Flux, and joining me on the show this week is Neinball,
Guten Tag.
and a first time on the podcast guest, Monstrous.
How's it going?
And you've been in a little intro for you, Monstrous, since you're new and shiny and Canadian. You've been in the community for a while. That's the last Canadian joke, I promise. We'll stick to Bobby Kotick jokes after
All
this.
right.
You've been in the community for a while. You've posted a big manifesto, or as I call it, a fanifesto, some months ago, making a bunch of suggestions. One of which was the gold bars rising into the sky from legendaries,
Yes.
which Blizzard put in the game like 5 minutes later. So congrats on that. And you had other ideas besides that, obviously. And now you were on a little podcast, sort of a group interview we did with Travis Day and another guy who never talked last week, right?
Right, right.
And much like Travis's sidekick, you never talked on the podcast
I
either. So here's
did.
your chance.
Everybody cut me off. Everybody
Yes,
stole my thunder. So yeah, I never got a chance.
which I've been doing for the last minute. So why don't you say, what's your interest in Diablo? How long have you been a fan of the game and the series? And do you want to be a game designer? And what's going on? Why are you here?
All right. Well, I mean, like many of you, I grew up playing Diablo. I mean, I completely spent almost all of my nights in high school playing D2. D1 was the same way, except for, of course, I grew up on a small little Canadian farm where I didn't really have the best computer or the or internet access actually. So I kind of had limited time playing D1 until I actually got my hands on it for like PlayStation, and yeah, I never put that game down. That was
So PlayStation Diablo 1, that's a
yeah,
rare achievement.
it is. I
That's
actually
not that rare because if people have been paying attention, that's how I played Diablo 1.
well, I mean, some of us that's the only way we could. So that's
Hmm.
my experience. Unless I went over to a friend's place and he actually had the old dial-up internet, so I actually got to go on and play a little bit of online. But yeah, it was mostly PlayStation as far as D1. D2, I played that a lot. Really enjoyed that. I actually owned Diablo 2 before I even had a computer to play it. I actually bought the game, read the manual, read the box, had it, and probably didn't play it for 2 months until I actually bought a computer, and then I actually had internet access where I moved. So, so yeah, I mean, a lot of reading of the manual for that one, and
At least it had a good manual.
yeah,
The Diablo 1 manual was awesome, and Diablo 2 manual was good.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
that's where the majority of the story was.
yeah.
That's how most people train for their adult relationships, but they usually use Playboy for that purpose. But so you kind of had the same thing. It only took you 2 months to get a computer, though. Girls are somewhat more difficult to obtain most times.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
And then you spent 14 years waiting for Diablo 3.
I did. Played a little bit of WoW in between there and searched for a game that was similar to D2, but could never really find a game to satisfy that urge. So yeah, so now we've got D3 and soon enough the expansion. So yeah, looking forward to that.
How was your early Diablo 3 experience? Were you a big fan of it? Did you play 40 hours a day and get burned out because of the auction house? Where were you on the whole spectrum of disillusionment versus happiness?
Well, during like at release, I really enjoyed it. It was new, it was fresh. But like many, you start playing it, and the auction house did take away from that experience a little bit. Um, I mean, I love trading in D2, but the auction house was a little bit of a different story. So
You sound scarred by the experience still.
not too bad.
I take it you're a fan of the potential for self-finding and for binding and no auction house in Diablo 3 or I mean the Reaper of Souls,
Well,
Loot 2.0, etc.
it, I didn't think I would be, but it's starting to grow on me. So yeah.
Do you miss the auction house yet, Nineball?
Um, I don't really miss the auction house too much. As I've been leveling a new Crusader, I do, wish there was an easier way to, find items and such. But then again, I've been testing out the story mode as opposed to adventure mode, and I find it really, it's not that easy to get gear, and you kind of will, if RNG screws you, you run into some stop points where you have to go back and farm for a little, or craft and hope that you found enough white items to do anything. So there's certain aspects where it'd be nicer having a easier form of trading.
But once you're in game, that the theory is that by removing the auction house and having item binding, they can cause a lot higher drop rate. Until, of course, this patch turned that off. But that was the theory.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun, going through. I was leveling my Crusader right before the patch hit, and everything got reset. Or not Crusader, my Demon Hunter, and she got the one-handed crossbow that made strafe free, and then I had the ice climbers that prevented you from being frozen or jailed, so nothing could stop you. And then I had the other one-handed crossbow that had the chance of spawning turrets and spike traps and such. So it was just like a little spinning ball of death. It felt like Barbarian 2.0. And then she died, and I lost all of that all those great items, and I was just regretting. It's like, well, how long is it going to take me to farm now in order to get all that back?
Forever.
Yeah.
That's why you don't play hardcore.
But it was so much more fun while he was playing it, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we tell ourselves anyway. So do you play hardcore at all, Monstrous?
I've given it a shot a little bit, but I like.
You have a level 7 Demon Hunter.
Yeah, I grow too attached to my I like to min max kind of. I like to really kind of try to like perfect my gear. So any setback would just I would hate that. So I just kind of stay away from hardcore. I mean, it's fun. I've played some games with it with some of my friends, but yeah, I don't really like the losing your character. I don't mind a death penalty, but losing your entire character and all the gear you've put hours and hours and hours into, no, not for me. So, but some people find it fun.
We'll pull you in sooner or later.
Yeah.
So since the patch, we had, as you said, Neinball, you were doing Zoom Zoom with your Demon Hunter, and then Jay Wilson leapt out of his grave and patched the game just so you couldn't play it anymore, because it's all Jay Wilson's fault, as we know. And what have you been doing since the patch? It's been, what, like 5 days now since it... Early this week, I think it was, Monday when it came back on, and the closed beta expanded a little bit, but you guys were both in before then. What have you been playing since the patch, Neinball?
I immediately started leveling a Demon Hunter, and then she died. So I have bad luck there, or at least I guess not bad luck, my usual luck when it comes to Demon Hunters and hardcore. And
that's everyone's luck with Demon Hunters and hardcore.
I've been leveling my Crusader, but I'm just getting over really bad cold, so I was kind of waylaid this entire weekend. I haven't had much of a chance to sit in front of the computer and play.
Well, that's what the whole point in getting sick is. You can play video games all day. You must have really been sick.
Yeah, if only that were true. That seems to only really affect you in your teenage years. As you get older, that doesn't. You get sit in front of the computer and you're up on the anti-sinus medication, and then everything starts spinning. It's like, I'm gonna go take a nap.
So I hope you've had a little better post-patch experience than that, Monstrous.
Yeah, actually, in the friends and family, I leveled up my Crusader, and I leveled it right from, I mean, obviously 1 to 70, and then I worked on my Barbarian a bit. I leveled up my Wizard, my Demon Hunter, but I didn't really play all that much on the Demon Hunter, so I stuck to really Crusader, Barbarian, and Wizard. But and right now in this patch, in this closed beta, I've only leveled my Crusader up. I think I'm going to dive in probably to the Barbarian this weekend, but I'm really enjoying the Crusader, and I don't know, it's new, it's fresh. That's the one I want to learn. So, yeah.
What class would you say was your main before Reaper of Souls? I mean, over the last year and a half.
Very first day that I got Diablo 3, I leveled up my Barbarian, and that's what I've stuck with. So, yeah, that's back when you had to use a shield and a one hand. That was kind of where I started, and then eventually I went to the Whirlwind build, and then, but I really enjoyed the Rend build, so yeah, that's kind of like what I played. Yeah, but now it's Crusader because obviously, I mean, the closest thing you could to a Paladin, a D2 Paladin, so, and was my favorite class in D2, so yeah.
And it's all new and shiny.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you've all that strength gear lying around, so something to do with it finally. Of course, it's all useless by level 64, yeah. But anyway.
Well, and partly, I mean, I'm going to play 2 classes, I think, during release. I'm going to play my Barbarian and my Crusader, and because of the Smart Drop feature, I mean, I'm finding gear for both classes, really, so, yeah.
Yeah, and even if you don't, you can often just re-roll. If if you're playing a monk over, you can just re-roll the dex to strength, and it's just as good an item for especially armor, not so much weapons, but
Yeah, but I mean, legendary items where it's at, and you're finding, yeah.
yeah.
So, eh,
Well, those don't drop anymore, so that's not really going to help you.
right.
So we're gonna get into legendary stuff in a minute. Just since the patch, I'll play along with my own question. I immediately level. I started off playing a wizard. I was playing with Ellie. We were streaming, and I got to 67 with the wizard and got kind of bored with it. I was actually really enjoying the total Diablo 2 wizard. I'm using the frozen orb that gives you glacial spike, not glacial spike. What's it called? Yeah, frozen orb.
Yep.
The arcane orb that gives you frozen orb, which is fun. I don't think it's quite as cool as the Diablo 2 version. It's not quite as precise in that in the Diablo 2 one, you really wanted to hit stuff right when it blew up because that was like the vast majority of the damage was when that little swirls came out at the
Yeah.
end. It's a little more forgiving in D3, but it's still pretty fun. And I was doing that with Hydra and Electrocute, and it was actually a very fun build. It was really felt like Diablo 2 though. Like I'm just sort of shooting Hydras ahead of me and zapping everything in close range and blasting constant frozen orbs. But I haven't played that character since. I need to go back to it at some point. And then I leveled a barb because I was curious. We did these little videos of showing off the new skills, and I had not played a wizard or a barbarian, so I figured my first to 70, I mean, prior to the patch. So I figured, okay, I got to do these two. And the barb, I was really bored by at the start. I liked barbs in Diablo 2 once they were high level and had really good stuff, but I was always really bored in the level up process. And I kind of had the same thing in Reaper of Souls in D3. I'm not a huge fan of the whirlwind build. Just felt so cheesy. I mean, obviously it was very effective, but just the fact that the whole the vast majority of your damage is as you spin past stuff. Your tornadoes from whirlwind and sprint are killing them like half a screen behind you. That always felt like a really like just a wrong build for barbarian. I could see if the demon hunter had that skill, I could believe it. Like demon hunter should have had sprint. Barbarian's supposed to stand there and smash stuff. Ugg smash, not ugg spin through things and kill them with wind 5 minutes later. But it's a very effective build, and lots of people do it, as one of our guests just demonstrated.
Yeah, it kind of ruined the experience. I mean, I guess for a lot of players now, because I mean they've seen or they've been playing the Whirlwind Barb for the last, I don't know, 6 months, and
18
or
months.
18
Yeah.
months, sorry. But yeah, so now they've been playing that for so long, and now they're, I don't know, slow, I guess, a little bit. They feel a little bit slower. I mean, obviously because they're not sprinting all around and just running through mobs, but I think that's where a lot of the complaints are coming right now. As far as the barbarian, they've been spoiled. So yeah,
Yeah, I've got a new champagne glass. I've been collecting their tears and drinking it. It's really good.
yeah.
So how about you, Nineball? How do you feel about the tiers of softcore barbarians and that the most overpowered build in the game has been slightly nerfed? Are they pretty tasty?
They are. They are. And one of the things I've been reading is, people are complaining. It's like, oh, now Monk is the most overpowered class, and everyone's not. It's like they're whining that they're not the overpowered ones. It's just, people aren't happy that things are balanced. They're just upset that they're not like the most OP.
Yeah, I thought it was funny that the barbarian was that way, and there were other builds in Whirlwind, obviously. The Hammer of the Ancients became pretty popular, and I knew people in hardcore who played very swordboard stuff and would use Rend and other such things. And now there's actually a passive called Swordboard, which gives you a bonus when using a shield. I haven't tried that one yet, but I've been doing a Frenzy Barb in the beta, and I was trying Avalanche all the way leveling up just to see the different forms of it. And it's cute, but I don't think it's really worth a skill slot exactly. But one thing I discovered just recently, I really started using a lot of splash damage. I mean, obviously Crushing Blow was the big exploit, and that's been taken out of the game completely for the time being. But splash damage or area damage, which they call it in the Paragon points, which is really confusing that it's the exact same thing and they have two different terms for it, so hopefully they'll get that nomenclature straightened out. But what it does, for people who don't know, is it every time you hit something, there's a 20% chance that any monster within 10 yards will take a percent of your weapon damage. And initially that is 0%. And if you put some points in it or get it on your gear, you can find it on weapons and on shoulders and I think maybe gloves. Yeah, I think gloves have splash. I can't recall
Gloves.
exactly.
I think I'm pretty sure that you can roll it on jewelry.
Yeah, so you could probably get, I don't know, I mean, who knows? You could get, I guess you could put 50% in it just for your Paragon points if you wanted. But anyway, a Frenzy Barb, I have like 35% splash damage on my Frenzy Barb from a couple items and from Paragon points. And it's almost like having Sweeping Wind as a Barbarian. Just in terms of everything around you, everything close to you. So Frenzy, you're just chopping one thing super, super fast. And I'm using the Brawler passive, which gives you a bonus damage for things that are close to you. And you get this big splash damage. So basically everything behind me, I'll just start hitting the boss or hitting a champion, and every trash mob within 10 yards is dead in like 1 second
Yeah,
without me ever hitting them at all, which is really nice. I mean, obviously you can do that with Rend and there's other skills that do that whole sweeping thing. But I'm really enjoying splash damage with that effect, and I'm wondering if people are going to get it more into those kind of things. I'm using the one rune on my monk that gives you, I mean, the one passive that gives you 20% cooldown reduction, and I have other cooldown reduction on him. And like something like Flash of Light or Blinding Flash for the monk is 50% damage buff for 3 seconds, and it's like a 20-second cooldown. But if that's a 10-second cooldown, that is an enormous amount of damage, and you're flashing it, basically every 7 seconds you're flashing it again, right? So I think that people are going to see a real once people get more into the game, the min-maxer types, like you are, Monstrous, are really going to get into things like splash damage and cooldown, and really figure out some interesting stuff with the Paragon system now that we have a lot of different places to put points, including resource reduction now as well as cooldown reduction.
Yeah, I mean, the Paragon system itself, like with the recent changes, it's got a little bit more interesting. Some people just think it's terrible the way it is, but it's actually not. Like you're going to be switching that up for different builds, and once you discover what kind of stat you're after as far as your build goes, you're going to be switching that up quite a bit. So
That was my next topic, so I'll give a attempt to give a brief intro to Paragon points, and then we'll throw this to Neinball for his thoughts on it. But they switched around a lot of the tabs. The main tab was the core tab, which previously just had the 4 attributes, and because no one was ever going to put anything in the 2 non-main stat attributes forever, right? I mean, no one ever. It would have been 400 levels of Paragon before you ever put anything in other than your main stat and Vit. So they dumped those and moved some other stuff around, and they also dumped Magic Find and switched in Gold Find, and they dumped off dodge percent and added it. And instead now we have life on hit and regen and something else. I'm blanking on. Oh, resource cost reduction.
Mm-hmm.
And so they changed 4 of them, and they shuffled them around a little bit. And I agree with what you just said, Monstrous, that there are multiple compelling options in each core in each tab. Previously, there was like one thing in each tab that I was obviously going to max out before anything else,
yeah,
or maybe 2 at most. So what do you think of the changes to that 9-ball? Do you like the new Paragon system shifting? And that's also on the PTR, so people can see it even if they're not playing the beta test.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with that one. It actually, it forces choices, and you have, hard choices now, which is, something that's good to go through and shows that they're actually putting a lot of thought into it and good game design in that respect. Because before, if it's just like a no-brainer, I'm going to put all of my points into vitality or strength or, crit or something along those lines, then it's boring. It's like, why am I getting all of these extra points? Just put it into this stat for me automatically. Why do I have to click the button? Now you actually have to sit there and think, well, it's like I have plenty of life on hit, so I don't really need that. I could bump my area damage, but I also, with the build that I'm using, I need the I burn through a lot of wrath. I could use the cost reduction, so it's good choices that you have to actually, you kind of feel bad about not putting points into the other ones. So every point that you use, the decision actually matters.
How many Paragon points do you have in the beta now, Monsters?
I believe 132. I think I leveled up once since the closed beta started. So yeah.
Yeah, so you had a fair amount bringing it in to play around with. I think that makes a big difference. Some people I know have very few, have like 10 or 20 or something, and they're like, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's doing much. But if you have a bunch, it seems like it does make a difference. You have enough, you have 20 or 30 in each tab. It's like, hey, I can play with this.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've been playing around with it. When I switch up some builds, I go back, reset my Paragon points, and play around with the different stats. Or if I swap out a piece of gear, I'll go back in and see what increases my damage or my healing or my whatever I need really at the time. So yeah.
What would you give for a live update on what? Because as you're doing it in the current thing, you just have that window open, and then once you accept it, then you can close the window and open your character window and see what's changed.
Right.
But you can't actually watch as you're clicking, 0.2% more critical hit chance. What is this doing to me versus the attack speed versus whatever. I really wish there was a way to compare them at the same time. Like if they allowed player mods, that would obviously be something in the game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or if it could just take up the same side of the screen, that the stash or the quest log does, and you can just, click through just like you would the stash. You have the 3 stash tabs. You instead have the 4 Paragon tabs that you can go through and click. And as you add the points, you can see the stats on the other side of the screen, change.
That wouldn't work with the console UI very well, though, so they couldn't do it.
Well, I don't. I guess.
Well, as we know, because all features that are bad in Diablo 3's UI are because of the console. So that's one of our running knowledge points, Monsters. So you just accept that. Anything bad is because of the console and/or Jay Wilson. So sometimes
Or
both.
because of Bobby Kotick's greed, though that joke has kind of dropped off lately.
Well, yeah, but that sort of underlies everything.
That's it's assumed.
That's like the system of capitalism that underlies all the evils of the bankers. You don't really go back to the base core. They're just a pair of glowing red eyes in the distance, and we all tremble before them like Sauron's might. So one of the things about Paragon points, I wrote an article a couple weeks ago, sort of after the start of the beta testing, feeling like that I had my hardcore account had 147 Paragon points, I think, and softcore had 121 or something like that. So in either case, it was like I would play, 60 to 70. Obviously, you don't get any Paragon points, but I was getting characters to 70 and then playing them for a week, and I'd gained half a Paragon level. And when I leveled up next time, I was going to get one more point to put in, get 5 points to put in Vitality. I was like, woo, exciting. And I didn't feel like I was missing the sense of when they first announced the whole Sharagon system way back in the day. We were all assuming it was going to be like a hybrid of what we had previously and a shared thing. Like half of the bonuses would be what your character would earn, and half would be for your account, something like that. So you would have some reason to feel like your characters were getting stronger, and as well as your account getting stronger. And I sympathize with the whole goal of it because I often felt handcuffed to my one main character. Because like I have to play this character, it's got max MF. I can't waste time playing a Paragon 5 because I won't find any items. So I really agree with the whole shifting that around. And of course, now that's entirely changed with the way Magic Find works. So maybe who knows how Paragon system would work without Magic Find in it. But I just get the feeling in D3 now in Reaper of Souls that I would like something to change on my individual characters, and especially imagining if you were like Paragon 290 or something, and it's like, well, let's see, in 72 days I might ding a level. Until then I'm changing absolutely nothing. Obviously you can change stuff, but there's no sense of incremental growth. And maybe the way they cure that is by having ladders that just reset all the time, and we have, you're always going up from 1 to 50 again on the Paragon levels because of the new ladder system. But are you guys missing the sense of feeling individual characters progress and change and grow after 70? Or can you not even tell yet because in this case you're still finding your gear so much?
Yeah, for me, a lot of it is just you're going through and you're playing. And in the previous part of the beta, I had gained, I think, maybe 3 Paragon levels, and it was nice because you'd find upgrades all the time, and of course it was a little bit overtuned in that respect. But I didn't really notice, that the Paragon level didn't really mean anything. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, I have another point. My movement speed increased. Oh, I got 5 more resist. It wasn't really something that I was caring about because all of my progression was coming from the items that I was finding, and the Paragon was just kind of I guess added bonus that you really wouldn't notice.
So what do you think, Monstrous? Do you want individual characters to change somewhat as well as the Paragon system, or do you think the whole sharing thing works just how it is?
Well, I mean, I totally agree with like the Sharagon system just because of like I, I was forced to use only my main character just because of the MF. Um, but I don't mind it the way it is. I mean, right now in beta, I kind of just ignore it because, and probably the same way it's going to be during release. Like you can see your bar going up, but there's going to be some people out there with in the 200s or even close to 300 Paragon where they're not going to be able to see their bar even advance at all after like a full play session. Just because I mean it's going to really slow down. But I don't know. It's not that exciting. It's awesome because you get to actually customize your character and everything, but you do get to that point where reaching or spending like a month grinding out one Paragon level to increase your movement speed by 1% or less. It's going to die down a little bit, but it's not too bad. I'm glad they removed the MF from it because that's all I was putting my points into as far as that area. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, I gave the 5-minute intro to it, so I think I made my thoughts.
Not really.
I think it's hard to judge now because we're obviously when they wipe all the characters every 2 weeks or something. You're making a new level 70 and you're constantly finding new gear. So there's a sense of your characters changing and stuff. But I mean, I'm just imagining. I don't know how many characters you did high level in the old days, Monsters. But I mean, I had multiple characters into the 70s and 80s in Paragon and hardcore, and a couple of them in softcore. And you get to a point in that where from like, I don't know, maybe like Paragon 10 to 50, like you just don't really change any of your gear. I mean, but you're constantly digging levels, and it's kind of exciting. It's like, oh, I got some more MF, and then eventually your MF gets high enough that you can start switching out gear, and you go, okay, I'm at the max MF now. I can switch over to these other bracers that don't have 16% Magic Find or whatever. So there was kind of an interesting point when you got into the 60s and 70s and 80s in hardcore. You wouldn't know about this 9 box. You never got that high. Oh,
Ooh.
but someday soon. But that was kind of fun to shift. But I just am envisioning that was fun because every day, twice a day, every few hours, whatever, you would dig again and go, oh, I got a little bonus. And even though 3% more and a level up of a couple of attribute points wasn't a big deal, but you just got the sense of, okay, I've changed. And it was fun to look on your character selection screen and you'd see 20 and a 38 and a 57 or whatever, and they had a little different colored. The little avatar was a different color on the border with silver or gold or red background or whatever, and they looked a little bit different. When I go to pick characters now, and I have like 9 characters in a row that are all, Paragon, all level 60 or 70, and they all have some big block of Paragon points, I can't tell which character I'm picking sometimes. Just the interface, they all have the exact same headshot. They don't have any little differences. And it felt like in Diablo 3, in the current system, especially, it was what we said a minute ago. You totally feel like you're locked into one character, or if not totally, very much so, because this is where the magic find is, and that's where all the best gear is. That's what matters. And like it was an all system. In the current system, it feels almost like it doesn't matter which character I play, except I guess it's variety, how you want to play that day. But they're all the same in terms of the Paragon points. They don't have anything. You can have a character that you put 1,000 hours into, and someone else can make one they put 5 hours into. And if they're both max level and they have the same Paragon points, they're the same character, except for the gear. And I just feel like I would like there to be some kind of a bonus or change, even if it was only cosmetic, even like you would get new. You would get new recipes, no new transmog options or something like that. Just something that would show me, okay, this is actually a Paragon 87 monk that I've played 500 hours of versus this barbarian that I've played 12 hours of. And now they're exactly the same.
Right. I mean, there is one indication, I guess, is which character has the most legendary items, because you're going to be getting the like class-specific items or because of the smart drop feature, right? You're not going to be finding a lot of items for your alts. So, I mean, your main character is still going to be your strongest character, and have the best
Especially
gear.
without an auction house and trading.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Very much so.
so that's a way, I mean, to kind of see, I mean, maybe not visually because of transmog now, but you could actually do a harder difficulty on your main character. You should be able to, unless you're getting really lucky in finding items for your alts that you can use.
So the character difference is gear.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, that's really the only thing that there is right now. I don't know what else they could add, but yeah.
How about some sort of a leveling system where you gain character levels as well as Paragon points? And the character bonus is, a much smaller bonus. Maybe it's only a passive bonus like what you got in D3 today.
Yeah, but though I mean for min-maxers, that would still be enough to detract them from wanting to play, any other class. So, give a reason to where, it's like if it's just 3 to your main stat and 2 to vitality and nothing else. If you play on that one character enough, eventually, you're going to be 100 levels higher than any of your other ones, and that will make a significant difference. And it'll be like, well, I don't want to play any of my other ones when this one's just flat out better. I can definitely understand and sympathize with. There's nothing that really designates and shows that, well, like, this is my class. This is my character. This is my special baby or whatever. But I've also been harking on that one forever since they allowed us to just change skills freely out in the field with the lack of build, some form of, permanence to your build. That kind of level of attachment to, your quote unquote main character, kind of got, laid by the wayside a very long time ago. And I don't really see them adding anything in to, build upon that.
You can even change skills more quickly now than you could.
Mm-hmm.
Just, there's no waiting. I do it in the field all the time. And then that's fun in the beta because I'm always trying out new skills, at least pretty often. But I don't think we're going to go back to the days. Obviously, as many changes, they've made a lot of things. The game has sort of returned to Diablo 2 in a lot of ways. I don't think the lack of respecs is going to be one of those.
Yeah.
So, I think they're pretty set on that feature.
I mean, until they...
It's not even that, like the complete removal of respecking or anything like that, but just having some sort of cost associated to it that allows someone to identify, well, I'm a wave of light monk versus I'm a monk. Just something that adds like something little special, to the character to signify that this is what it is. Kind of like at towards the end of D2, what was it, 1.13, that they added in the ability to respec, but you had to go and farm. Quite a bit in order to get one of those tokens, besides the few free ones you got while leveling.
Yeah, well, that's not gonna happen. Yeah, it would be even say you level up twice without changing your skills, and your character looks a little different or something. But then the developers made very clear they want to allow people to change as however they want on that aspect of it at
Well,
least.
especially
And Paragon, are you surprised that Paragon points don't have any kind of respec or anything? You can just do that whenever you want also.
I don't I don't know. I don't mind it just because the way the loot 2.0 is, like right now you could find an item and you're going to be changing your build, or you're going to be switching it around just to make that item work or fit it into your build somehow. So I kind of like that you can just swap your skills, and I mean it's the same way. It works exactly the same as Paragon system. So yeah, combined with loot 2.0, I don't mind it.
Yeah, I mean, the way that the system is set up right now, it fits very well and works for how the game is designed.
Yeah,
it definitely does. It does not support that. The way that the game's designed now wouldn't support it going back to that, build permanence. But for what it is well put together. There's something interesting that I noticed while I'm playing, that if you get one of the rare bats out in the Blood Marsh, and they have the little boggets as their minions, if they pick up their minion, it removes the elite tag.
It becomes big.
Well, it becomes big, but it removes the elite tag from it, so it loses all of its abilities.
Bug report. So, have either of you guys abused the Paragon point respecking system to, you're getting up, okay, now it's time for Belial, okay, I'm going to switch all my points to life percentage and vitality, or how about I'm saved up 10 goodie bags, and now I'm going to put all my points into Gold Find, or Magic Find previously, you could have done it, and switch all my armor around, so I'm going to add 500% Gold Find before I open up these bags. Is that an exploit? Is that a problem? Should people, if they want to click the button enough to do it, they should be able to do it?
I've never actually even thought of doing that, even as far as the MF.
And you call yourself a min-maxer.
Well, did the MF affect the bags themselves, or was it only the difficulty?
I would assume when you open it, it would pop it. They drop a bunch of gold, right? So I would think the gold must be affected by your MF.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but I mean, I've never run into a situation where before a boss fight, you're switching, or even an elite pack, you go back to town and switch your skills around just so you can beat that one. I mean, I've never done that. Have you guys?
You're playing hardcore Neinball. Have you done that? Do you wish you thought of it now that you've died?
Yeah, not so much that, but I have switched it around as I went to try out like different specs and such, where it's like, oh well, attack speed is going to be a lot more beneficial for this spec because I need to it's heavy on wrath expenditure, or for the demon huntress, when I was going through and playing that, I had ton of crit chance but very little critical hit damage, so I changed over to the critical hit damage because it was just a larger damage increase. Or changing around as I found gear, it's like, oh well, I'm movement speed capped now, so I can take a couple points out of movement speed in order to put that into something else. So yeah, I've messed around with it and used that where I see needed, that I could benefit greater from changing it around.
I think that definitely happens as you're leveling up. I mean, I don't know what you guys have done, but my new characters, I have always put everything into movement speed and attack speed because it's so fun at level 1. Because you move so slowly and you hit so slowly, And you can twink a weapon. Obviously now with the ridiculous level of gems, you can anything once you get a socket. It's like, hey, I just quintupled my damage. It's like, whoa, I guess I win now. But level 15 is the nice point for that. But I have put them into. I have done some switching before. Just last night I was playing on Master with my monk, who was a little below that on his gear, and I had Belial for a bounty, the last one in Act 2, and I went in and added 150k hit points or something by switching all my life and vitality around. And actually, I didn't need it because he didn't seem. They seem like he nerfed his damage a lot. But we'll get into difficulty stuff in a minute. But I can definitely see people long term doing that. Or I mean, even it's if there was a button you could click and it would just say, I wish there was a way you could set all your points to something. Because I mean, I've got like 37 in each tab in my hardcores, and it's a little tedious just clicking the same button 37 times when you want to switch a skill around. But if that was automated, if there was some easy way to do it, I think people would be doing it like in the early days of D3, where you would switch all this MF gear on before you open the chest, So you don't want it to
Hmm.
get too easy, I guess. Even though now it's only gold find, but you could add 100% gold find, which isn't a real big deal. You get 500% anyway on higher levels. So, drop rates. One of the big changes since the patch is the legendary drop rates are way down, and I think the developers said that they were overtuned at the start. Now they're undertuned, and hopefully they're gonna find Goldilocks at some point here. But how is your legendary finding rate going, Monstrous, between before the patch and now?
Well, one night my brother and I probably played for 5 hours, and I watched him probably.
Is this before or after the
This is
patch?
after the patch. This is closed beta, so this is like the other night. Actually, I probably played for like 5 hours one night, didn't find a thing, and then the next night, I probably found like five legendary items in the same amount of time. So it's very hit or miss, but much lower than previously.
And do you think it was overtuned then, or is it undertuned now, or both?
Um, well, my thoughts are I think it really needs to be a combination. There should be, I think there should be different, like the more common legendaries that drop more common, maybe similar to what we saw in the Friends and Family. But then again, there should be those another step in legendary items that are much harder, something similar to what we're seeing now, or maybe even beyond that. So I think they need to find the right balance of the combination and the drop rates for specific legendary items. So yeah.
So you want to return to a day of Diablo 3 where you find Andariel's helm 14 times a game, and what's that stupid barbarian belt you're always finding that no one ever
Ageless
wears?
Might.
Yeah. There's a few legendaries that you find, I mean, I was actually
Ivory
keeping, we had a
Tower.
little survey going for a while. Yeah, Ivory Tower, thank you. Where we were writing down the ones we would find, and I had found at one point keeping track, I'd found I think 37 Andariel's helms and one Mimpo during that time frame. It's like, oh boy, another orange hat. I'm so excited. I can barely wait to see what it looks like. Oh, what a surprise!
Well,
So I'm afraid we might get that again if you've just found the same stupid one all the time. It's like, oh great, another Gladiator's Gauntlets, and now they don't spawn mega gold drops. Who cares? But I definitely think it's underspawned. But I mean, the same question to you, Nineball, before you continue that one,
Yep.
Monsters. How does it compare to before the patch and after? And do you think it's overtuned or undertuned?
It's definitely undertuned right now. Just when we were talking earlier, it was going through and leveling a new character. It's been kind of a pain trying to go through and get items, especially if you're leveling in the story mode, which I have some complaints about that. Which we can talk about later. But
Do you still get a legendary from every Yak
yes, you
boss?
do.
Just the first time?
Yeah, so I've completely wasted that on all of the act bosses as I've been leveling instead of waiting until
You
7.
level 22 or something? It's like, ooh,
Yeah, I got this great level 17 two-handed sword that I got off the butcher that I'm keeping in my stash for memory's sake. Um,
well, that'll be awesome.
I
but it's
tried that.
yeah, it's definitely under 2 now, and I guess kind of like what Monstrous said, that there should be varying levels of rarity on certain legendaries. So I think that they're kind of doing it now, though not so much rarity. Though they're limiting certain legendaries to the torment only. I guess maybe like as a kind of solution to that is make it another point where there's another set of legendaries that only drop at torment 3 and higher and such. So that way it kind of adds a level of uniqueness or prestige to those items for it to drop. Because as a hardcore character, I have to think of it from the mentality that I can get all these really cool legendaries that might take forever to go through and grind, but eventually one day I'm going to lose it. And does that mean I have to grind for another 1,000 hours before I find it again? So having
Yes, yes, it does.
yes, but having that without any form of being able to trade or recoup it, that item upon death or losing it, I'd like there to be some form of at least that I don't have to, that I'm looking forward to maybe 100-hour grind to find one again, as opposed to like a 500-hour grind to find one. And then at that point, it's just trying to find a better one.
I really, really think that killing, let's say, let's for just for thought here, let's say there's a character that could clear normal difficulty one run, 1 20-minute run or whatever, or maybe an hour run. If they could clear that, and then there's another player that could clear Torment 6 in the same amount of time, just as efficiently, let's say they're just running through, I think honestly they should find, instead of right now, you would find way more legendary items in Torment 6, the way it's set up right now. But I think it should be changed that they find the exact same amount of, maybe their legendary drop rate is the same, but the quality of the legendary items is better, or you have a higher chance of finding the better legendary items at the top. I think that's the way they should balance it, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I don't know, because I mean, that even if the item is better, that still removes, a lot of the uniqueness or the prestige, because you go through and be like, oh well, I've got this one, I've got this torment level 6, scorn, or whatever equivalent item, and then someone else is like, oh yeah, well I've got one too, and it
But
just, even if it's a lesser item, it kind of defeats a lot of the specialness of actually having gone through and acquired it, even if
right,
it's better.
I'm not suggesting in any way that like there should be two different qualities of a scorn. I'm just
Hmm.
saying that like maybe there's maybe there's five kind of common two-handed axes, and they drop more than, let's say, as it gradually increases. That maybe the scorn is the hardest axe to get. So if you're playing in Torment 6, you have a better chance of finding a scorn than you would playing in normal difficulty. So, I mean, maybe you can still find that scorn in normal, but the drop chance is like way, way, way lower than Torment 6. At least it gives you a way to you want to progress, you want to get up to Torment 6 just so you have a better chance of finding a better quality item. I don't know. That's just my thought on it.
Yeah, I think that it's actually a pretty good system as it is now, because that going, like right now, that going to Torment 6 is going to give you uh a better chance of finding more legendaries with which to go and equip yourself out with. I guess there could be something done, to make it to where it's incentivized even more so, that there might be better drops, or that there's certain legendaries that are unique to it, or maybe, I guess going on the quality of it, just that, things that are drop on Torment 6, they're guaranteed 6 attributes,
Right.
to drop every time, something along those lines.
Yeah.
So that way,
I think like my suggestion there was so they find the same amount of legendaries, so you're not on one end of the spectrum. Like you're not running into the situation now where there is no legendary items dropping, and or back in Friends and Family where you were just rained on, like with rained on by legendaries. So as long as they can get that balance right, so you're seeing one of those a beam every, I don't know, maybe 3 an hour or 5 an hour, or whatever they want to, they can actually determine the drop rate across all of the acts. It's just the quality, then at least the excitement's still there, right? They're keeping the same excitement, not when you're clearing Torment 6 and you're just getting poured on by legendaries. So I think that they can keep the excitement by making the legendary drop rates the same, just changing the quality or the different types of legendary items that can drop. I think that's my 2 cents on it. So
There's an issue that we get in Diablo 3 where there's sort of a rich getting richer thing, where you need a bunch of magic find in the current game to find any legendaries, and the more you find, the more magic find you get, and the more you can level up. And obviously that's kind of unavoidable, and maybe you don't even want to avoid it because that's just how the game is supposed to work. When you play harder stuff, you should get better rewards. But there has to be some level of balance where if a player just plays occasionally and can barely do Torment 1, and they see someone on the stream on Torment 6 and they're finding, I think Monstrous has a decent point on that, where if you watch someone who's put way more hours into it into you and they're just finding better stuff and throwing it away than you've ever seen in your life, you're like, well, this is just not fair. I mean, I can't ever catch up to what this person does without putting in 1,000 hours of playtime, especially now that you can't just buy them from Chinese people. So It's gotten much harder to find the better gear. But I think that there's just an issue of you need to have some egalitarianism, maybe, or at least the potential of a lucky find at a lower level without having to. You don't want anything where you have to play the highest level to get the best gear, and then that's the only way you can play the highest levels by having the best gear. The casual player is completely. Meh. One other point on before we get into the whole magic find thing, where I can explain why Monstrous and Travis Day are wrong, is the difficulty, the quality of rares that are dropping. And that's a huge, especially it's most noticeable in the weapons. In that, back in the Friends and Family, before the patch, you would routinely find 3,000, 3,200, 3,400 DPS one-handed rares. And you could get like 37, 38 with legendaries. And currently, the really good rares that I've seen are like 2,000. And even up to, I haven't played on Torment much yet, mainly because I can't find any good damn weapons. But, but are you guys noticing a much lower damage on the items? And that seems like they balance that across the board, where it's just you're not going to you could get 800k DPS really easily just with rares in the previous for the patch, and now it's like you're struggling to get like 500 just at level 70. Is that slowing you? Is that holding you back yet, Neinball? Or have you overcome that with your massive skill?
No, yes, my massive skill my skill at killing demon hunters. I've noticed it while leveling that, though I think that's more to do with the reduction in drops. So we've gotten, now that I'm getting fewer drops, the quality of my drops, if I got a little bit bad RNG. But when I was leveling my Crusader beforehand, I mean, it's like I was level 50 and I had 50k HP, which I'm not that far off at the moment at level 49, but I also had like 25k or 30k damage at level 50, just from the gear that I had. And then by the time that I had gotten to level 60, I was far better off than any of my other characters that I'd ever rolled in hardcore before. Just fresh level 60 from gear that I've gotten while leveling. I had 80k health and like 125k damage. Just from adventure mode. And I am struggling at about 11k right now because I have a marquee gem in my weapon.
So you're level 70 barbarian monstrous. How does he compare to what he was before the patch?
Actually, it's my Crusader that's level 70 right now. I'm gonna level my Barbarian I think this weekend.
Good
But
man.
my Crusader, he does have a lot less damage just because of the fact that you already mentioned that the one-handers or the weapons in general are a lot lower as far as the top end damage and everything. But I really think that's just they're playing around with the balancing to see how difficult they should make it. But they did that in a way not by nerfing the actual difficulties or buffing them, but playing around with the gear that you can find. So I don't know. It's a tricky balance. I mean that's what beta's for, I guess, is they're playing around and testing things. But I've run into a situation like the other day, or actually last night. I was using the two-hand passive on my Crusader, and I found a nice one-hander, legendary one-hander, and I switched to the one-hander, and I lost probably 100k DPS, and I was just playing around with.
But you gained foot speed.
I gained foot speed. That's right. That might have been the factor there.
That's for the 100k DPS, right?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
But I found that because even I switched to the one-hander, and because of the actual damage type on the holy, like it was a holy weapon, and I changed some skills around to base it off the holy to increase. I actually started gearing. I went around, found some bracers with my holy damage, and I started gearing in a different way just because of the holy damage, and it doesn't show in your stats. When you add like skill damage and things like that through your boots and things. But I could go from, just even though I went down 100k in DPS, I went from Torment 1 and I was farming Torment 3 last night easier than I was with the two-hander in Torment 1. It just made such a huge difference. So I don't really think you can base everything off of the damage of the one-hander, or sorry, damage of the weapons in general. I think it's going to be very interesting just with the combinations of gear and the different stats on gear and playing around with that. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to. That they're making the plus damage to skills available on almost every piece of gear, and you have the plus elemental damage on a couple different of the pieces to make it to where you can it's not quite the old plus skills that we're all used to, but it's definitely a lot better in terms of itemization than what D3 Classic was. I'm really looking forward to seeing if they build upon that, to where you have things that will make it to where you, like you're saying, you're clearing just as fast, if not faster, and on a higher difficulty, regardless of the fact that you lost 100k DPS.
Right. And that's like I really think they need to show that. I don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe in the tooltips or something. There's a couple great suggestions already across on the forums about when you do add like an item that does plus 15% damage to Blizzard, that it should show in the tooltip as well. Um,
Yeah,
I think
that's
they need to
that's
work on that and change it, but I don't know how hard it is from a technical standpoint. So
yeah, I know that's something that's been asked for a very long time now, and hopefully they'll add it in. Though they've been very adamant about not wanting to you know make the tooltips too advanced in the sake of approachability. But that's certain things like that. If we're using advanced tooltips, I would really love to see how my skills are affected in the elemental damage or the cooldown reduction or the resource reduction, to see that those things are actually taking effect.
yeah, in a way, it's less user friendly because you actually have to you have to go around looking at all your gear and then calculate it yourself instead of actually just looking at one spot and figuring it out. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Well, as soon as they get commas in the auction house, that's their next fix. They're going to put that right in.
I'm sure that they're working on that right now, Flux.
they couldn't.
Have you guys noticed how big the commas are in the game? Like you have a weapon that's 1,414 damage or something, and it's like a huge one. There's like this big space, and then a comma, then a big space, and the next three numbers. It's like the kerning on commas is like double what it needs to be. Like they want to make it really obvious. Ooh, look how giant this comma is. Ooh,
Nerf kerning.
Uh,
yeah,
they're,
they're just taunting us. They're not having commas for a year and a half.
yeah, they're compensating.
Okay, that was it for part one of the show. Part two is the second half of our conversation, and it's about the same length. We go into a lot of discussion about Magic Find, which has just been largely removed from the game, and in what I think is a mistake, and in which Monstrous and Neinball both think is a good idea, and we have a big debate over that, and I prove them both wrong, of course, because I'm correct and they're not. Or perhaps that's not the way it goes. I don't remember exactly. And then we also talk about a lot about adventure mode and Nephilim rifts and the new cursed chests feature and some other in-game stuff, and that will hopefully be posted tomorrow, so you can listen to that before the big weekend before Christmas, when no one will be around and everyone will be off playing Diablo 3 if they're lucky and doing other things. And moo.